With the Olympics now in the books, it's all about the push for the Stanley Cup back in the NHL, and every game on night one mattered. And that's an understatement in terms of mattering for the standings now in the midst of the stretch run throughout the spring. Welcome into another edition of Locked On NHL Game Night, as we now are back in our regular swing of things.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
I'm Mike Osti, a digital journalist in the Pittsburgh market, most notably with Yardbarker, and I host a podcast, Mic Drop, that's played on SiriusXM, and joined alongside my friend and colleague, Alex Wiederspiel, once again.
And I host a radio show in West Virginia and work as a play-by-play, among many other things that I do. Oh, and I write for Yardbarker. That's probably the big that's probably the big one, right? I just wrote a piece actually about the type of players who has the best chance of using the Jordan Binnington springboard. Like he did after Four Nations. He went on a tear last year after Four Nations. Yeah. Who might do that in the NHL after the Olympics? We'll talk about that, I'm sure, tonight.
100%. And you called some games recently as well. So yeah, you're a busy man, right?
Yeah. I Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then I'm very excited going to do some games in Morgantown this weekend. So the ACHA calling my name.
How about that? Well, welcome in again to another episode of Locked On NHL Game Night, and now we are back. These are NHL shows after the Olympic break there. Team USA wins the gold medal, the first gold medal for the United States men's team since 1980. All the fanfare of that. We get to both Americans. We get to reap the benefits of that for another 4 years with the win over Team Canada, but now back into the push for Lord Stanley's Cup. And as I said, this is really now going to be a race in the spring. A lot of games clumped together, and all of these are going to matter. And night one, they definitely mattered. Again, Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And Alex, we are going to start with the last game of the night. The game that ended last will now headline this show, because as I wrote the script and as I was getting ready to do this and watch the earlier games, I knew in the back of my mind, I really need to leave some room for this final game to leapfrog the others. And that is exactly what happened. The Anaheim Ducks, who just will not go away. No one predicted they would be there before the season. They are there. They will not go away. They get a 6-5 victory over Edmonton, who basically blows the game, a game they thought they had in hand earlier in the night. Leo Carlsson had a fantastic game as well. I believe 4 points in the game. McDavid had a couple assists, had a couple more points. I mean, death taxes, and he's going to produce. Draisaitl was off the stat sheet, but Edmonton drops a heartbreaker. Jari ends up getting yanked. A real rough way for the Oilers to open up the second half of the year after the Olympic break, especially for McDavid to taste another rough loss after what he just experienced with Team Canada. Does this say more about the Ducks being for real, or about Edmonton really being on alert here? Maybe a panic button needing pressed, that they might forget about losing in the Cup final. They may not even embark on a deep run this year.
I think I'll be curious to hear what Nick has to say about this, and I know we'll get to him in a minute.
Sure.
Edmonton's inability to lock games down has been a concern all season. It is also worth noting it's a Ducks team that they have been feisty all year. There is no lead safe against the Anaheim Ducks. And how can you not talk about Leo Carlsson and what a performance he had? I think 3 points he finished the night with, including a goal, and had an assist on the game winner. And his first game back since January 10th. And it was very clear that the Ducks missed him. And he was big tonight in powering their comeback, and ultimately Joel Quenneville's 1,000th regular season win of his career. So big night.
Pretty safe bet Hall of Famer, I would say. Pretty safe bet, with or without the 1,000 regular season wins.
Yeah, and
safe bet
regardless of the, I mean, we'll see how how he gets judged for some of the off-ice stuff, but regardless, 1,000 wins is obviously a big deal. And I think the thing is, if I'm Edmonton, I just don't understand how you're not able to lock this game down in some capacity. But if you want to look at kind of there are a lot of goals in this game, and I know Jari got pulled, and I think it's tough for me to look at Jari and say this one's entirely on him. There were a couple of goals in this one. If you go back and look at the second goal in this game by the Ducks, the Killorn goal, mess of a defense. Like, it's the first line and first pair out for Edmonton, and they let Killorn basically roam wild in the high danger spot in the low slot. So it's like it was stuff like that you when you're going to have tight margins for error, you can't make those mistakes.
Here's the issue, though. Edmonton's problem in the Cup final the last 2 years, certainly the games they lost, and of course they were tough series, that they didn't really have nearly enough defensively, and the goaltending wasn't enough, certainly in comparison to Florida. Everybody else they could kind of beat offensively with the firepower, certainly out west. That didn't work against a team like Florida. Now, likely Florida's not going to be back. They're having a rough season. But Edmonton now appears to be worse defensively and worse in net, despite actually making a trade and shipping Skinner out to try to improve. And your problem for our problem in a deal with the Penguins. Since that trade, Alex, Skinner has been better than he's ever been. He had that stretch where he won 7 in a row after the deal. We'll see what happens here in the second half. Jari has been in and out of lineup being hurt, and now he gets pulled here to start off the second half of the year. After the trade, they may not even go with him to start the postseason if they continuously play like this. It's just weird to me what's happened to the Oilers, because after 2 years ago, they had a hunger to get back, and it is impressive to get back. Nobody thought they would get back. And then now it almost appears like they're in a funk, and there's no momentum there. There's no excitement there. If you're an Oilers fan, and again, we'll hear from Nick here in a moment, I would imagine if you're going to ask, what's the franchise that maybe is the least fun to root for the fans, might be the Oilers. If they don't win the Cup, is not successful, the odds of getting back are almost impossible. McDavid looks like he's depressed every time he's talking in interviews, especially after what just happened in the Olympics. Draisaitl doesn't look depressed. He looks mad. He's angry in every interview. Now you have a worse goaltender. What are you cheering for if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan right now, and especially after this game?
Yeah, and we know how tough it is. I mean, getting back 3 times in a row is really hard. Of course, it's happened. It's happened. I mean, Florida did it. Tampa Bay did it. It's still very, very hard to do. The one thing I guess worth noting about Edmonton here is that, and I want to be careful how I phrase this, because I don't want to excuse some of the disastrously bad Edmonton performances that we've seen this season. And I'm not saying that this is one of them, though there were some issues tonight.
They've blown some games. They look lackadaisical at times this year.
And we've seen, I think about that 9-1 loss to Dallas, and they didn't they give up a 10 spot earlier this year as well. But the one thing I want to note is that we have seen this where, whether it's, and again, this is being very generous to the Oilers at the moment, but we have seen this in the past with the Tampa Bay Lightning. We've seen this in the past with the Florida Panthers, that there is a point where a team gets to be so good that they don't take the regular season quite as seriously. But when they need to, they can turn it on.
Sure.
What we now need to see from Edmonton, much like we saw, and we didn't have this, obviously, quite the same level of massive break. 4 Nations was a big break, but I think was a week shorter than the Olympics was. I will be curious to see if Edmonton can find a way to recapture the magic that they turned on around this time last year. And they were super banged up at this time, so we'll see.
They've done this every year.
I have some concerns. This might not be. I don't know that comparing them to Tampa and Florida is fair with how bad they've been defensively.
Yeah, and those teams won cups and had a dynasty. I mean, they are better than this, even though Edmonton's been great the last 2 years. And every year they weren't predicted to really, even the first year, a couple years ago, they weren't supposed to go there. They get in the playoffs, and when you look at it, Alex, they're going to be in the postseason. When you look at these series, certainly out west, and you look at McDavid, Draisaitl versus McKinnon, Dallas, any of these teams they could play, you have to say to yourself, well, they certainly could win. It'll probably be a long series. When you have that firepower, you can beat anybody. But to actually go all the way, that's hard to say. And then they also are very vulnerable for the early upset the way they're playing. And yeah, they've just laid too many eggs. They've let too many games slip away. We're now going to check in with our Locked On Oilers host in Nick, and I feel like it's been the same old story every time I play one of his clips in his disappointment on what's going on with the Oilers. Even in wins, it's like, we hung on, but we almost blew it. Well, this one, you do blow it.
Certainly wasn't a boring one in the Edmonton Oilers return to action after the Olympic break, falling 6-5 in a game where the Oilers at one point led 2-0, 4-2, and 5-4. The Anaheim Ducks storming all the way back on a night where it felt like the Oilers had started to pull away. They scored 2 goals late in the second to go up 4-2. Going into the third period, built a little bit of momentum and killed off 3 of the 4 Duck power plays to that point. But as this game went along, the Ducks' depth, especially amongst their high-end guys, started to pull away. I thought the Oilers' defense, which had played reasonably well through the first 40-odd minutes of this game, really started to feel it. The Ducks wore them down over the course of that third period, and the mistakes were not great. And look, anytime your goalie gives up as many goals as Tristan Jarry did tonight and he gets yanked, you got to have an honest question, an honest conversation. And the question surrounding this goalie group right now, it is not an ideal place to be, considering this team already changed both the goalies they came into the season with, and that's on top of a defense that's underperforming. So even though the Oilers scored 5, it wasn't enough to win, and that's just not good enough.
No, if you're the Oilers, you can't be losing when you score 5. They did what people wanted. They've changed goaltenders, and it still didn't matter. They end up losing this game, and that's kind of the problems with the Oilers. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they can turn it on. And kind of a rhetorical question, I'll just hang out there for people that are in the comments that are listening to this. You could compare it to teams being really, really good and getting bored with the regular season and all they care about is the playoffs. It also could be, and that could be true, but unlike those teams that did that after at least winning a cup, Edmonton's lost back-to-back years. So maybe it's not so much that they're so good and they're bored with things. Maybe they're literally emotionally spent and just they're human. Maybe they're just thinking, if we can't win the cup, what is the point of February 2026 hockey? Like maybe they just emotionally cannot get into it. And maybe they'll get into it in the postseason, but it just could be one of those years that maybe it's even better served mentally to have an early exit and then hit the ground running the next year and finally get some rest for McDavid and Draisaitl, especially if you don't think they're lifting the cup. What I do want to ask you, though, before we go to an East Coast team and then hit a break, yes or no, Anaheim for real as a legit threat to make a deep run? I mean, playoffs is a different question. Yeah, I think they're going to be a playoff team for sure unless they really, really tank. But is this a team? They're led by a cup champion head coach. You could argue even Jack Adams with what he's done with that team, even though there's a lot of young talent there. Is this a legit team that you could turn around and if Edmonton, if McKinnon, if Dallas doesn't get it done, could they make a cup run?
They might wind up playing Edmonton in the first round of the playoffs.
And they could beat them. They clearly.
So I think it's plausible. I don't think that they're cup run yet, but they I think this is a little bit by design. I'm seeing some New York Ranger vibes from the Gerard Gallant days, if you catch my drift, meaning they have a legit chance at winning at least one round, if not 2. I don't think that they're quite a cup team, but they're going to be a tough out for anybody because of the way that they play and their depth. They have issues, obviously, that can be taken advantage of. But I thought that they were going to be the last team in. That was I did have them as a playoff team. Last team in when the season began. This is a little better than even I expected.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I don't think he's going to win the award, but you got to give it up to Quenneville for the coaching job this season. They'd absolutely look a year ahead of schedule. Now, a team that is not a year ahead of schedule, you could argue they're years behind schedule, and that is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Lose 4-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning, whom, for the Tampa Bay end of things, they're red hot. They were red hot to go into the Olympic break, and it looks like they didn't miss a beat. They're playing the exact same. They're red hot again, and Kucherov gets his 700th career assist, the 9th fastest player ever to get to that mark. He's already a Hall of Famer if he would retire tomorrow. And Alex, he's so red hot that he had multiple goals overturned early in this game. He could have had a 6-point night, but those goals were overturned and referees kind of screwed him on some offsides calls. Tampa Bay ends up still winning it pretty comfortably. They went back and forth at the end of this game where Jake Gensel from Team USA misses an open net, puts his head down, almost in tears. Granted, they were still up 2 goals. It was a whole thing. 11 seconds later, Tampa Bay says, "Oh, no big deal, no big problem." They then score to make up for it and get that 3-goal lead back. Again, it is answered by Toronto, but it doesn't matter. Even Tavares ends up scoring one, but it's a 4-2 final there, and Tampa Bay was the better team all the way through. I do want to ask before we go maybe into more of a conversation on the Leafs' life here, because Tampa Bay certainly is going to be legit. I want to ask you for some trivia here on Locked On NHL Game Night. So Kucherov dominated this game, now has 700 career assists. How many points, total points, do you think he's tallied since the turn of the year, meaning January 1, 2026?
Oh, it's something crazy. I don't remember the exact number, but I'm trying to think. I mean, how many?
Give me a ballpark here.
How many?
Give me a range.
How many games have they played?
I don't have that in front of me, but
all right.
At least double digits into that.
All right, I'm gonna roughly say 23 points.
So you're not even close. That's what's insane about how great he's been. 41.
Oh, yeah, that is wild. Hey, by the way, also worth noting, you think Brayden Point wasn't a little motivated tonight?
100%. 100%. I was going to bring that up. Yes.
Guy who obviously would have preferred, I think, to be at the Olympics, wasn't healthy.
Sure.
8 high danger chances he created tonight, scored twice, added an assist. Big night for Brayden Point.
100%. But Alex, what's going on with the Maple Leafs? Their team president before the game today, leading up into day 1 of the NHL being back, literally had a whole diatribe of saying he doesn't basically, to paraphrase, he doesn't get why there's so much, criticism. They have a 9-year run of being in the postseason. There's no other team in the league that's been in the playoffs 9 years in a row. It's hard to do. You got to respect that. I even actually do have the quote in front of me here. This team has made the playoffs 9 seasons in a row, the longest streak in the NHL, something to be proud of. But as I've said since joining the organization, our goal is not just to make the playoffs, and we will do whatever we can and whatever is needed for this team to take the next step. I demand it. They now lose. Then they follow that up with losing to Tampa Bay. They were never going to win that game all the way through, even with having it, kind of fun there at the end, trading goals in the final seconds. This team, Alex, we talked on shows earlier on in the year that they went from being way out of the race to then bucking the percentage trend. Look, they were going to get back in the playoffs again. Austin Matthews, of course, wins a goal, but doesn't really play well in the Olympics, still gets criticism. And now they're in this situation that it looks like they may fall out of the playoffs altogether with all the money that's spent there and all the limelight that's on them. What is the deal? If you can give me 30 seconds to a minute analysis on the
let me just put it this way. I don't know what the deal is with Toronto, other than I don't think that they have enough scoring depth. They're definitely not getting enough.
That's hard to say, though, if you look at the roster.
I mean, but it's not.
The roster should be scoring.
Their scoring is entirely concentrated in the top 6.
Sure.
The blue line is not good enough, and the goaltending is not as good as it was a year ago.
No, it was
and
bad
they have a coach who, to his credit, I think Craig Berube is a good coach, but he is known for suppressing offense, and that includes his own, in favor of playing a more defensive brand of hockey.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's what Toronto needs right now, because they have to outscore their problems. The last thing I'll quickly just say on this is that there is no fan base who wants to hear less about their 9-year run of success than Toronto Maple Leaf fans.
Yes.
I am offended for them. I am offended
the team president, Alex. This is a franchise. This is a franchise. Forget a championship drought. They have not been in the Cup final since 1967.
Keith Pelly, what are you doing, man?
He opens up the first day, the morning of
insane
game 1 of the return, to say we were in 9 years in a row. Get off our keister. 9 years in a row is good.
No,
I want more than that. He demands. This is a James Dolan thing. I demand more. Well, he can't be happy with what he just saw. But I mean, this is the whole conversation for another day. But
Yeah.
Honestly, Alex,
Wow.
if everything you're saying is true about their future, and especially if they don't get in now, and even if they get in this year, they're not going to go anywhere. They're certainly not going to embark on a deep run. Austin Matthews, if you look at some of the answers he was asked during the Olympics, he comes off like a guy that's a little frustrated with the Toronto media. You have to think, if you're the Maple Leafs, I know they kind of just did a rebuild recently, despite their playoff run, and Dubas is gone, and they kind of ushered him out the door. If this is your life, you may have to consider trading one of your top stars. Maybe saying maybe go to Austin Matthews in the offseason, maybe not this year, but next, and say, if you're unhappy here, let's move you and get a haul. Because if they're far away from winning a cup, what is the point? 9, 10, 11 years in a row, as you're saying, Toronto fans do not care about a playoff streak if you can't go anywhere, and they're having trouble going anywhere, and they might not even get in this year. So what is the point of all these stars and then losing games like this? But I will leave that be for another day, and we will move on to some teams that they won some games. They won some important games, and we had some important games in our standings for both the East and West as we move on here with our first show back after the Olympic break here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future game, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. You know, some contests out there, Alex, where they just give you the tickets and say, oh, go figure it out how to get there. No, this is paying for the whole way for you and somebody else to go. If you're already looking at, thinking how your team's going to get there, or if your team's going to make it, and if you want to think about going to the NBA Finals, or you want to get there in general, this is the perfect time to lock in and give it a go. I love future bets this time of year because it really gives you the opportunity to have something to look for and kind of give a reward to yourself if you hit things right in the next month or so moving on. And visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on NBA futures games and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back with you, Mike Ostie, Alex Wiederspiel here, Locked On NHL Game Night. Now kind of moving right along, you have a debut. If you remember before the Olympic break, if anyone can remember, Panarin got traded. He went from the Rangers to the other coast in the Los Angeles Kings. He now made his Kings debut. That was maybe the blockbuster move of the entire year. Not maybe, it really, really was. We'll see what he does for the Kings, though, as they weren't really in the race when that move was made. Probably more of a move for the future, as the Rangers, on the other hand, fully go into a rebuild now. He did have a couple assists in the games, but the Golden Knights picked up the win. They outscored and really outshot and out-offensed the Kings, who at one point looked like they were going to get this dub. What do you make of Panarin in his debut with the Kings? Do they look any different? How much better are they with him? They had a serious injury in the Olympic play that really hurts their defense. He does help offensively, but if they crater defensively, I don't think he's enough to really change the fortunes of this team this year.
Well, he's going to need to play a big role. Obviously, losing Kevin Fiala and everything that he brings offensively is tough. But Panarin, I thought, looked good, and the chemistry looked like it was building. He also took a really bad penalty in the third period that, again, whether or not you think it was retaliatory or it was just him getting frustrated. Look, you're not going to win a lot of games. You give up 5 goals in a period, 4 of which obviously occurred with a goalie in net. I think the early returns looked promising. We're going to need to see a little bit more. I think the issue, and I guess there are kind of 2 points here for LA. A, is it too little too late? And B, why can the Kings not win it?
I think it is too little too late. I do think so.
The Kings it's funny that Panarin went from one of the worst home teams in the NHL to the second worst home team in the NHL. So I don't know what's going on with the LA Kings at home, but Artemi Panarin just left the New York Rangers, who were 6-15-4 at home, to the LA Kings, who are now 8-12-7 at home. And it has been the most inexplicable thing this year to see 2 teams that were once upon a time were elite in their own buildings. it's unbelievable. Like I have no explanation for this.
I mean, it's a decade ago, but they met in the Cup final, even in the Rangers and the Kings, in a distant memory ago. But yeah, this Kings team.
Let's not talk about that.
Well, this Kings team looks still far away, even with Panarin. It's only one game in. He's an impact player. He's going to score. He's going to pick up their offense because whether it be the Kings Cup teams or even the Kings teams recently, Kopitar or not Kopitar, and of course he can retire at the end of this season. They are a team that grinds it out. They want to do it defensively more than even offensively, even though they can score goals at times through the years. And this team really didn't have that fire punch. This team really didn't have that offensive guy that could carry you through a game if maybe you're just doing it defensively or having a down night with everybody else. It almost was a group of role players. Kopitar missing a lot of games this year. And then you now bring in Panarin and you have a star. You have somebody that could carry you through. And I'm not expecting a hat trick one game in, but he definitely provided a difference maker. But now with all the injuries they're dealing with, and it just seems like their style doesn't work against all the teams they're playing. They have so much more firepower than them, even with Panarin. They're just so far back to me that even if they crawl in, they're not going to really go anywhere. We'll really see this full-on group maybe next year. That really feels like they're banking on Panarin being there a while and being able to utilize him for a while. How good are the Golden Knights for you, though? They are a team that just never goes away in these type of games. And that's what happened here in this one again. They did more than a team with the best player on the ice.
Weird year for Vegas. These were the two teams leading the NHL in 1-goal games, and obviously Vegas has very technically actually won fewer games than they have lost. Of course, 14 of their 30 losses are in overtime, which makes a tremendous difference, and it's why they're on the top of the division. I don't remember the last time we've seen something like this, but I'm
look at these
shocked.
Teams tonight blowing the games, though.
Almost
they're
shocked
not
it didn't go. Yeah, almost shocked it didn't go to overtime. I think Vegas. We haven't seen them with enough time yet to really see how Rasmus Andersson is going to fit into this group, and I think that for me will be the most important thing is Anderson sliding into that role defensively. And they weren't playing with Shea Theodore tonight. Noah Hannafin wasn't in tonight. Mark Stone, Mitch Marner. So like you look at all the guys that Vegas was missing and they still exploded for 5 goals.
Yeah, they had to have players step up. That was even talked about on the broadcast. They had to have players that normally not relied upon get more minutes in this game.
I feel pretty good about good about Vegas. I still don't think they're as good as Colorado, but obviously I don't know that you can ever, this is crazy as this is, they've already traded for Rasmus Andersson. I don't think you can count them out of doing something else.
Well, not only that, I mean, they're always a franchise that is willing to make moves all the time, certainly since they've been in the league, but do they get enough goaltending is really their issue. The goaltending this year has not been what it was in their runs to the Cup final. They can't have just okay goaltending with this group. But yeah, a depleted team, you're missing your best players, and you win against a team that was debuting somebody who wasn't playing in the Olympics and was off. Like he was fresh as a daisy, and they end up getting the victory. Moving on, though, into the whole other side of the country, the Buffalo Sabres. Talk about a franchise and a team that will not go away this year that maybe wasn't expected to do anything. They get a 2-1 win over the New Jersey Devils. The whole fanfare at the beginning of the game, Jack Hughes is out there. He talks to the crowd. He actually does an impromptu thing and brings Tag Thompson over to the ice with him. That wasn't planned. He cries. The fans cry. You have the American flag there draped over the fans. And then you get into the game, and
they had other reasons to cry after that.
Well, I was going to say, like, then you get into the game, and they're crying for a different reason. And I'm going to give Jack Hughes a mulligan here. He's coming off the golden goal. He's done a lot. He's experienced a lot. It's been a roller coaster ride of emotions. He scored the golden goal, then he gets himself involved in a scandal. Then he, goes to the White House.
Well,
he does
let's not call it a scandal. I mean,
well,
I know we don't have time to get into.
No, we're not going to discuss it here. The way it was perceived around the country, I'm not giving an opinion of myself, but
I
understand. It was scandalous and controversial. I mean, I don't have a problem with what he did, but my point is he was dealing with a lot of emotions. He was going through a lot the last 4 or 5 days. He had a rough game, though. This is one of the worst games I've seen him play just in general. And I mean, he almost even led into a goal with his play. He had a horrible turnover in the mix there. I give him the mulligan, though. The Sabres do win. For you, Buffalo Do they hang on? They make the playoffs?
Oh yeah, no, I think Buffalo is a playoff lock at this point. By the way,
Okay.
and I this is not political when I say this. This is why the guys who didn't go to the State of the Union, I actually think made the right choice, because if you look at how condensed the schedule is to end the season, I don't think you could afford to take any extra time away, and that was, I think, critical tonight for the Devils' most important player, who, by the way, has 2 goals, and he didn't score tonight, right? I don't who got the goal for the Devils. I didn't catch who scored for New Jersey in this one, but he had only had 2 goals in 19 games coming into this one for New Jersey. He looked great.
Myers scored the goal for the Devils.
He looked great at the Olympics, and the thing was,
I mean, Hughes had an assist, but he had a rough game. He had a real bad turnover.
I was concerned with the way he looked going into the Olympics, and then as it turned out, he was healthy. His hand was
right.
fine.
I mean, no one predicted he was going to score the golden goal, but he did. I mean,
but the hand being fine was big. I think the bigger issue is you look at this Devils team. Sheldon Keefe. I still think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach. I think he is clearly the wrong coach for the New Jersey Devils, because the style that he wants them to play and adopt is not fitting and meshing with this team for whatever reason. And I would think with a guy like Nico Hischier at the top of the lineup, it would work better, but it's just not. It's not fitting with this group. And I don't know if the Devils have enough runway to make the playoffs at this point, but I tell you what, Buffalo has plenty of runway, and they have runway. They are more legit than the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting whole conversation for the day as well. I mean, Buffalo's legit and they have runway and the Devils don't, but it's hard for me to buy too much into Buffalo going too far, but we'll see what they do. Again, they have tons of runway. And I actually, agree with kind of what you're saying there. And again, this is not political either. I get going regardless of where you are politically, but if you heard what Jake Gensel said in particular, and by the way, and I feel like he was the best person to speak on this and no one really understands his career or heard him. He literally said, guys, I went to the White House with Trump in office after I won the Stanley Cup. I literally wanted a break. Like, that's what now you can believe him or not. That was his answer when they asked him why he didn't go.
It makes total sense to me that like, after playing all that hockey, you would say, I need to spend some time with my family.
Right. Like, and obviously there are people that are on one side of the aisle that didn't like that because they wanted him to take a stand against Trump. There are other people that didn't like that he just didn't go because they want him to go and they want him to feel like that's a support of Trump. That's again a conversation for another day.
Not for this show.
No, obviously. but he literally said that I personally, Jake Gensel, which is true, he was on a cup champion during Trump's administration, the first one. He went to the White House. He didn't skip. No big deal. And he would have done so again, but he wanted a break. You can believe him or not, but that's what he said. And, he also missed the empty netter, but he had a much better day than Jack Hughes overall. I do want to get our good friend Eddie Garcia, part of us here with Locked On NHL Game Night and the host of the Kings show here in. So we're going to play his little thoughts on the Kings' loss to Vegas.
Well, excitement and embarrassment here at Crypto.com Arena for the LA Kings. Excitement because it was the LA Kings debut of forward Artemi Panarin, and he delivered with a couple of assists, including a beautiful passing play with Andrei Kopitar and Adrian Kempe for a goal. But the Kings allowed 5 goals in the third period. They had a 2-1 lead after 2 and fell apart in the final period. And lose 6-4. Embarrassing because the Vegas Golden Knights had 5 key players missing, 5 Olympians, Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner, Shea Theodore, and Noah Hannafin, all sitting this game out. And the Kings, who are fighting for a playoff spot, miss a golden opportunity to take advantage of a shorthanded Vegas team and lose in Artemi Panarin's debut. Not a good third period, to say the least, and a difficult loss for the LA Kings in this one.
I know we need to get to a break, but just real quick note, Kenny Albert doing that broadcast after coming back from Italy. And you could hear it in his voice, man. Voice sounded strained, but good for Kenny. That was fantastic.
100%. Yeah. I mean, Mike Tirico, Kenny Albert, this is a great week or two for play-by-play men who were at the top of their game and they didn't get much sleep. They didn't. Yeah. Edzo too. Edzo didn't get any rest. One of the better color guys in the biz. Jackie Redmond didn't get any rest and she was out there as well. So that whole crew didn't get any break. That's what was funny. Actually, you heard her, one of the the nice interviews where they were literally saying, well, we're playing without our full team, talking to Vegas. I got to, take it in reason to paraphrase, but I think we're doing fine. We didn't get much of a break. And she literally said before they tossed it out of her, neither did I. Almost like, like the whole media crew didn't get any break either. So they're not going to totally feel bad. Abs win it 4-2 over the Mammoth. They, like Edmonton, almost blew this game, and I say almost because they didn't. They had a win. They were up 2-0. It got closer. They ended up winning and exerting themselves. Obviously, they're legit and they're going to be around and going to be a contender. They went from an historic start to the season to now just being a regular great team. We'll see if they keep on clicking after the break from the Olympics and Utah team that's also fighting.
I think the break was good for them. For a lot of their players,
I do.
It was
they were
needed.
getting stale a little bit before the break. Like that's when they dipped a little bit. They had a rougher 2026 than 2025.
Right.
And now they look like they're back in.
And how about, listen, I know it's in a losing effort, but Logan Cooley is back, and that's huge for Utah. And I know that the first game back can be tough to reintegrate a guy as important as him. But as that occurs, I think Utah, the fact that they played as well as they did without him should probably make us think that this is probably going to wind up being a playoff team as long as they figure out how quickly to reintegrate him into the lineup, which, again, I don't think is going to be that hard to do. Logan Cooley would have been a dark horse Olympian had he been fully healthy, and of course he was not. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there as well. And also, by the way, that Avalanche trade of Sam Girard, just a quick note, opening up a little bit of cap space there, both in the short term and the long term. Don't ever doubt the Avs' ability to add big at the trade deadline.
They may honestly feel like that despite where we are in the standings, we need to do more to actually win the cup. And it's clearly
100%.
about winning the cup this year. It's not about doing anything else.
100%.
So that absolutely could be in their mentality. And I wouldn't disagree. They have looked a little stale the last 2 months, despite their great early start to the year. And for Utah, just simply put, they have a lot of fight. They never give up in games. So they're kind of like Buffalo in that way. Maybe like Anaheim, where they just always fight and they land on some wins. They didn't tonight, but
can I throw my conspiracy theory out?
You have a Utah Mammoth conspiracy theory?
No, I have a Colorado Avalanche conspiracy theory that the Colorado Avalanche cleared up that cap space so that they could acquire Vincent Trocheck, and that going the other way in that deal will be Chris Drury's nephew, Jack Drury, who is currently this. He's typically the third line center. I think tonight he was the second line center for the Colorado Avalanche. That is my conspiracy theory. I have no idea how they would make the trade work value-wise, but it's my conspiracy theory currently.
We will see if that comes true here on a future show. But on the other side of this break, we're going to hit on a couple close games and one team that flexed their muscles as we return to finish up our debut episode here of the second half of the season post-Olympic break of Locked On NHL Game Night. Back with you, Mike Osti, Alex Wiedersby here, Locked On NHL Game Night. And to kick things off here in our third segment, the Capitals get a win over Philadelphia. We've talked on every show we've been on together that Philadelphia feels like they're going to fade. They're not really for real. The Capitals have been up and down. They've kind of had a run where they were losing even when Ovechkin would score. He didn't have to take over this game. He did not take over this game, but they won it anyway. They were a team that had some rest. Obviously, Ovechkin didn't play in the Olympics. So you have an older player who's your star that you're still relying on. He looked fresh, which you want him to. He was able to be off for a couple weeks. Assuming you agree that Philadelphia is probably going to taper off here and fall out, how good are the Capitals for you?
Yeah, I've been pretty critical of Philadelphia.
I've been saying it for the whole season that I don't think Philadelphia is going anywhere. And they're very much like Toronto, where they're in this state of neutral, where you're not going to go anywhere this year. You're not going to probably go anywhere next year. There's not really room to really change the roster that much. If you're a fan, you're not happy with what's going on. And then do you want to rebuild? Probably not, because you never do it there. That's the weirdness that they're in right now, but they lost this one.
I do still like the Tocchet hire, but yeah, they're in a bit of a...
But they're in a neutral, and as we talked about throughout their history, they refuse to announce a rebuild.
Well, but that's what the hiring of Danny Briere was, though, right? Like, they did kind of go through their rebuild. The problem is...
And then they got here.
They walked away out of the worst years of it without a single premium prospect at a premium position. Sure. And the one premium prospect is not getting along with the coach at the moment. So I don't know what to make of Philadelphia. I will say for the Capitals, it has been weird to me the way that they have played all year, because there have been some nights where they have looked like the Capitals of last year. And there have been some nights where it looks like without Logan Thompson, they're going to get run out of the building. And Philadelphia didn't play a bad one tonight, but they could not beat Logan Thompson enough.
Philadelphia doesn't have enough firepower. 100%.
No, for sure. But Thompson, if they can continue getting Vezina level goaltending out of Logan Thompson, I do think Washington getting back into this race is realistic. He has been excellent this season.
And you have to also mention that, despite maybe being upset about what went on with the country and not being able to be there, Ovechkin having a break when a lot of these stars had to play could be a real benefit to the Capitals here in the second half of the year when a lot of these games are clumped together. He's obviously an older player who's still very important to his team. And for a comparison, for a team that's in the playoff picture right now, but could easily fall out of the race in the next month, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be without Sidney Crosby now for 4 weeks, maybe even longer. Who knows his full-on health? You want a conspiracy theory? There are some that believe many conspiracy theories on his actual health. And if you think they're going to drop out of the race, Alex, because they have all these teams we're talking about tonight, they didn't play, but all these teams they're going to be on their schedule. If they lose a lot of those games, then you're switching out the standings, and these teams are in and they're not. So a lot can change here the next month. And it appears Washington is actually one of the healthier teams, with their star being the healthiest and the freshest. That's all a positive as well. I do want to check in with our Locked On Capitals host here to give him the last word.
The Capitals make their triumphant return as they down the Flyers by a score of 3-1. Hi, this is Dan Homey of Locked On Capitals. Well, after an Olympic break that seemed like it lasted forever, the Caps get back into the win column. It was a slow start to the game, a scoreless first, but ultimately Rasmus Sandin, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, and Alexei Protas with the empty netter get it done. As far as Logan Thompson is concerned, he made his return after appearing in the Olympics, saving 23 of 24. And things that I liked out there a lot was the Beauvillier, Sordoff, and Frank line. They were worked well together, generating chances and putting the pressure on the Flyers. Chychrun had one heck of a game as well. Got an assist in the game, 9 points in his last 6 games. It's crunch time here. The Capitals have to make the most of all their opportunities. A nice win. Let's hope they can keep it going forward.
One quick note on this, by the way, if I recall correctly, it was after the All-Star break 2 seasons ago.
Yeah,
that Ovechkin scored 22 goals after the All-Star break. He only had 9 goals in his first 44 games that year. So it's not out of the question that he could use a long break to his benefit. That's
100%. Again, you can't go back and have a discussion again about whether they should have been there or not. They weren't there. He got a break, and it could really benefit this Capitals team right now. That is 100% accurate that his second halves have arguably been better than his first half these last 2 years, and a rest could really kick that into gear even more. As we roll right along here, the Stars take care of business, and that is what they did. They took care of business. The game was never in doubt. A 4-1 victory over the Seattle Kraken. Ottinger from the Olympics. Obviously, Hellebuck was the starter, and Ottinger didn't really do much in the Olympics, but he got a break nonetheless. And Casey DeSmith was in net for Ottinger and Dallas, and they were able to get the victory. For Seattle, though, because Dallas is certainly going to be a contender, and if not Colorado, if not Edmonton again, people certainly would then say Dallas, and for good reason. Head-to-head matchups, all their offensive firepower. Ottinger's been there in the past, and you could argue Casey DeSmith is one of the better backup goaltenders in the league off of experience. Do you like Seattle's chances, though, to be in the mix here at the end of the year?
I mean, in the mix, yeah, but I mean, everybody, this last spot, I think, in the Western Conference playoffs, everybody kind of wasted their opportunity tonight, right? Like Utah, Seattle, and LA.
Game matchup though.
They all lost. Yeah,
right,
all 3 of them lost.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting, Seattle, I think it's really tough for them because the team that is directly chasing them got the player that they were rumored to be hot after. They had the allegedly best contract offer ready for Artemi Panarin, and at day's end, he just didn't want to go to Seattle. So I know
Los Angeles, Seattle. Yeah. Seattle's a nice city, but Los Angeles, Seattle.
But keep this in mind, based on what The Athletic reported earlier this week, that the Seattle Kraken are very interested in acquiring an elite winger, because obviously they missed out on Artemi Panarin.
They're going to do something.
And I wonder, because Shane Wright is rumored to be potentially on the block, I wonder if someone like Jordan Kyrou from the St. Louis Blues could be of interest there. But Seattle's going to have to do something, because I'm not convinced that they are going to be able to hold on to the playoff spot they're currently in with the roster they currently have without adding something.
And I do think that maybe it's hard to not read into a lot of this game where they were never in the mix, but Dallas is so good. So I don't know if you can.
Dallas came ready to play. This was the first 40 minutes of this game were brutal.
This was a rough game one matchup of a second half of a season for Seattle, but we'll see what they do from here on out. If they're really going to be a player, they're going to have to make a move for sure. The Jets also get a victory in overtime over the lowly Vancouver Canucks, and that was a close game all the way through. Of course, Mr. United States, the king of the country right now, the Minister of Defense, or whatever you want to call him.
Reggie White
did not
would have something to say about that.
He would have something to say about that for sure. But in terms of living, maybe Reggie White, rest in peace. But Hellebuck did not play in this game, and yet Winnipeg was able to get the victory. So what I want to ask you, because this Winnipeg team has been rough all year, and prior to the Olympics, Hellebuck had been rough all year. And I even made a comment actually during the Olympics that someone took an exception with, where I said, it's been a while since he had played this well. And somebody brought up, of course, well, he was MVP last year. And I brought back and said, I think we're arguing about the definition of the term a while. You're saying a while is off a recent season. A while to me, a year ago when he was playing that well prior to the playoffs, so March, about a year ago from the Olympics, that's a while to me. But such a great Olympics, can he pivot that into momentum to fix his season and fix and save the Jets season, or is his story for the year just about the Olympics?
I actually don't think it's insane to think that the Jets, even though they don't have much runway, it's been a really rough go.
Yes.
And this is the one thing I will note, and I know we're really low on time here.
Just after this will be done.
This is the one thought that I have had about this long Olympic break, is that there is going to be, I do not know who, but there is going to be one bad team who was bad basically the entirety of this, first 55, 56, whatever number of games, the first 2/3 or 3/5 or whatever of the season, who is going to get hot because they had the benefit of a break that they otherwise normally would not have gotten to be able to reset their season. I don't think it's crazy to think
we mentioned with Ovechkin, for example.
Right. It's not crazy to think that Winnipeg could be that team based on the fact that their formula for winning hockey games is we're going to keep the puck north-south so that Connor Hellebuck can be the walrus that he is in net, and much like Team USA did, and they know the formula for doing this. Does it mean they're going to get into the playoffs? No, but could I see Winnipeg actually making this interesting? Of the, say, worst 6 teams, I think it's plausible that they have a shot. There are 2 teams, and Winnipeg is one of them, that I think have a real shot at getting back into this.
And the thing is, and it's not fair to him because they do give a vibe that they rely so much on him. I mean, for USA to win, he had to be their best player. That's his life with Winnipeg as well. That's why they haven't had deep playoff runs, even though they have a lot of goal scoring. But for some reason, when they get into the postseason or big games, they just, as you're saying, they just sit back and rely on Hellebuck to save the day and not allow anything past him. And that is a really tough recipe for a goaltender. But for anyone who just watches him at the Olympics and didn't really watch the whole season, yes, he is a future Hall of Famer. The Vezinas will take him there. The gold medal will take him there. He had a really rough first half of the season. It was a sub 900 save percentage. It was his worst first half, maybe of his career. He did not play well
after the surgery was.
He did not play well. So for them to even be relevant, he has to play like he did in the Olympics, if not better, the rest of the way. And I could argue that's unreasonable, but that is maybe the situation he's in. And we'll see if he eventually gets sick of it for years to come, because that might be his life again next year as well, unless they do something in the offseason. But they seem pretty comfortable with where they are. So that'll do it here for our first episode of Locked On NHL Game Night after the Olympic break. We're now back into the swing of things here every night after NHL games. Thanks for tuning in, of course. Like, subscribe, comment on a comment on a comment. and you can get more of these. And if you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, there's a Locked On NHL Team podcast and YouTube show for you, because we have one of every NHL team. And this show, Locked On NHL Game Night, is here for you every night of the regular season and playoffs, wrapping up the night in the NHL. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As I mentioned, that'll do it here for this episode of the show. For Alex Wiederspiel, I'm Mike Oste. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your teams every day.